fresh, looking so fresh. When I walk by, breaking their necks. Waiting in line at the team store. Now I'm feeling fly like a condor. Eyes on me when I walk through the door. Man, I wish I bought a couple more. Cause I really love my city. It was worth every penny. If it were at my show, then I know they gon' tip me. Think I might add a couple patches. If you think it's ugly, you capping. Now my whole outfit matching. Never going out of fashion.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome, episode 665, Talking Friars podcast and YouTube show. Ben Fadden with you here on this Wednesday night. The Padres' first day pitchers and catchers report to spring training, and the headline coming out of today is not anything that happened there. It's a move, a guy that's coming in to the team, and that is Nick Pivetta signing a deal with the Padres. And this is according to multiple reports, but I believe it was Jeff Passan that reported this first. It's a 4-year deal worth $55 million, but there's opt-outs after year 2 and year 3. The deal will pay Nick Pivetta a $3 million signing bonus, a $1 million salary in 2025, $19 million in 2026, $14 million in 2027, and $18 million in 2028. So this continues the trend of the Padres not wanting to spend any money for this year, like actual payroll. Now, what this contract doesn't mean that the luxury tax for the Padres increases by $1 million or $4 million. It's still a little less than 14, I think, around $13 million is what the luxury tax hit will be for this Pivetta contract. They are well over the luxury tax. They were already over it before this Pivetta signing, and now they're going to be 17, 18 mil, I believe, over the luxury tax. So, I see this while I was working, and I'm like, okay, interesting, pumped up a little bit because they make a move. It's a major league starter. It's someone that we know that we can put there in that 4 spot for now, as of now. But as I think about it more tonight, I'm just confused by the signing, to be honest. And I'll get to that. But I did want to just go through information here. Yeah, 4 years, $55 million, pair of opt-outs, pending a physical still, according to Jeff Passan. Kevin Acee had 2 sources confirm it as well. Dennis Lynn wrote a piece, AJ Casville, so it's happening. But yeah, my initial reaction was just, excited, a little pumped up, but then again, like I just said, a little confused. And I still am a little confused because Kevin Acee put out a tweet earlier today saying, this was a couple hours ago, the Padres have been focused on limiting their cash payroll. So this year, not surprising, which this contract further indicates. It also further indicates that going over the first CBT threshold is not an issue. And I read that and I'm like, okay, that leaves me a little bit pissed off, to be honest. Sure, I can be happy that Pivetta is a Padre and that they improved the depth of the rotation. Seems like they have improved the rotation with this Pivetta signing, obviously. You would have been asking a lot if you're going into the season with Vasquez, Brito, Waldron, and Steven Kolek as your guys fighting for the 4-5 spots for that rotation. But when Kevin writes here, first CBT threshold, not an issue, then what have they been doing this offseason? If it wasn't an issue, because to me, it seemed like this entire offseason that they wanted to get, and that's what I was reading, I think, from Kevin. I'm pretty sure he mentioned that multiple times. If they were thinking about and trying to get under the CBT, because they weren't very far over it before these moves that they have made. Hayward, Joe, Pivetta obviously hasn't been finalized, or officially announced by the Padres, but Pivetta, Diaz, before these moves, they were not that far over it. And so now for them to be, not close to that first luxury tax, but significantly over it, more more than a Dylan Cease contract. I'll put it that way, or a Luis Ariz contract, or Robert Suarez contract. More than that over the CBT. I just wonder, did the plans change? I'm seeing this on social media. Some fans like, well, maybe because there's more clarification because John Seidler's taking over what the payroll is going to look like. And I just totally disagree with that. Because if you're AJ Preller, you need to know what the payroll is going to be, regardless of who the owner is. Because it's not like they had Steve Ballmer coming in and buying the team. That would be different. But it's the Seidler trust still. So to me, everything should have still been the same. And we read reports, Kevin talking about how, yeah, status quo, things are pretty much going to be remaining the same, how things are being run. So why significantly go over the CBT this year? And Kevin's saying that it's not an issue. Okay. And they're definitely not spending money for the actual payroll for 2025. And a lot of money's being freed up next year. So that's how you can backload the Pivetta thing. But I just go back to that CBT thing and it's like, all right, well, then why couldn't you offer something to Profar like this type of deal where he's getting paid almost nothing for 2025, but then you can pay him after that? Or what about Higgy? Where Higgy, I mean, look at the money that they're committing. I just put that in air quotes because it really is like a 2-year, $21 million contract. If, because that's the money that's going to be committed to Pivetta. He can opt out after year 2. Why couldn't you do that to bring back someone like Higgy? And then you run with Higgy, Campy, and then maybe Maldonado minor league deal. You still have Brett Sullivan. And you didn't have to spend the money on Elias Diaz. And I would rather have Higgy as my starting catcher and just run that back than what they're doing right now, to be honest. It's confusing to me. Again, I can be happy that they add a starter here, but I mean, it goes to as well like some of the other starting pitchers that were available on the market. Now, maybe they liked Nick Pivetta and they thought that they could further elevate Pivetta's performance more than other guys like a Jack Flaherty who signed with the Tigers for 2 years and I want to say it was like 30-something mil. But okay, if you're okay with going over the CBT and it's about this year, why couldn't you do this type of contract with somebody else, with another pitcher, so that we don't even have Waldron, Vasquez, Kolek, Burritos, fighting for a 5 spot? Now, if they got Sasaki and they would have added Pivetta, we would be talking about this differently, but they didn't. I'm a little frustrated, to be honest. I didn't think I was going to be, but I am. Just reading this contract, and just like, did things change? This was the plan all along. Once they lost out on Sasaki, this was the plan all along. It was to bring in cheap guys, platoon, huge question marks with Hayward and Connor Joe, and sign Gavin Sheets to a minor league deal, and then it was to pay a starting pitcher. But, Nick Pivetta was not now available free agents, yes, but at the start of the offseason, he was not a guy that fans immediately thought of like, oh, yep, Nick Pivetta, he's the guy to go get, or just around baseball. Like, you're not thinking about Nick Pivetta. It's a solid 4-starter, I think. You look at the ERA, and it was like, what, in the 4s these past 4 years or so with the Red Sox, but I think being in this ballpark will help. But he's also, now the AL East was tough as well, but the NL West could be pretty tough as well. I haven't totally been able to dig in just with what's been going on with myself today, but it seems like he gives up the long ball a little bit. Gave up 28. He's given up at least 20 home runs in a season. At least 23, actually, each of the last 4 years with the Red Sox. But the good news is he gives you innings. Each of the last 4 seasons, he's pitched at least 140 innings. And the ERA, the adjusted ERA, I should say, which would be, where is it? Maybe that's on Fangraphs, not Baseball Reference. But So I can look that up. But like the FIP, fielding independent pitching, that 407, lower than what his ERA was. The previous year, 396, lower than his actual ERA. So that what that is trying to take out some of the other factors that ERA can't take out. I did want to bring up, let me look up that Fangraphs page because I thought I saw like the adjusted ERA, which I think tries to like neutralize everything and it's not based on the ballpark that you're in and what actually the amount of runs that you gave up. Well, here in 2025, I'm looking on Fangraphs right now. They project him for 165 innings, 29 starts. Like, yeah, I'm signing up for that if I'm the Padres, to have someone that can consistently give you innings like that, that's going to be big because Darvish is a question mark. I love the preparation, and he's like, him and Joe are going to be the last people. I know Joe's not pitching this year, but those are the last guys I'm going to be questioning about their work ethic, their care factor, all of that. But he is getting up there in age. And obviously missed time last year. I know there was a personal situation, but he did miss time with injury. And he's not a guarantee to be healthy. Dylan Cease isn't a guarantee to be on the roster. Michael King, he's the guy that you'd think will be one of the workhorses in this rotation this year. And he was able to stay healthy this past year, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be healthy again this year. It seems like every starting pitcher gets hurt at some point. That's just what it is nowadays. Where was it? The xERA. I think that's expected ERA. So his expected ERA, according to Fangraphs this past season, 3.51. His actual ERA was 4.14. So it seems like to me he got unlucky. His FIP 407. His expected FIP was 3.50. So again, if you put him at Petco Park, now he also has to pitch at Coors Field maybe a little bit and some other ballparks that may not be as friendly. But you put him at Petco and maybe you see those numbers actually come down to where they were when you like adjusted the ERA and all that stuff this past season with the Red Sox. So I've seen some clips already going around on social media, him striking out Shohei with the fastball up, or at least getting swings and misses to Shohei with those pitches. It's a vet. It's someone that takes the ball. But my big takeaway, and it probably shouldn't be, but it is just in my mind. Why now? Why are we switching to, or maybe we just weren't told the right information, but why now are we switching to, oh, who cares about the CBT? We'll go way over the CBT. And if they were just focused this entire time on not spending for this year, then be creative in some other deals to bring back guys that were pretty darn important to the Padres winning 93 games in the regular season this past season. Maybe that's just me, but just seeing the contract and seeing some of the reporting, it irritates me a little bit. Profar, I get it. Like over 40 mil, okay. But like someone like Higgy, I'd rather have him be starting catcher. Now, Elias Diaz, I'd love for him to prove me wrong. Campy, I'd love for you to prove me wrong and you hit 20 bombs and you stay healthy. But that hasn't happened yet. So, Nick Pivetta, great. Kind of reminds me of Michael Wacha when the Padres signed him. So we'll see what happens with him. Now, again, they backload it because there's going to be money freed up. Eric Hosmer, that's 13 mil that gets freed up next year. Luis Ariz, Michael King, Dylan Cease, are those guys going to be back? Any of them? We'll see. That frees up space. So if you do, and I did briefly have this question before I answered my own question in my head earlier today about, well, so you can't pay him this year, but then suddenly you're going to have a bunch of cash flow next year because that's what they're worried about this year. But it's not necessarily cash flow. It's cash that they're not spending on other players and they can spend to Nick Pivetta. They can pay him. Now, do you extend Michael King, or not extend, but you bring him back in free agency, let's say, and you don't bring back Dylan Cease, but you can pay, some of, remember, you got the Hosmer money, you have, I want Rise to stay, but we'll see. You have Cease money, and can you dedicate that, not that literal money, but the space that they're taking up this year, can you put that towards Michael King next year? That's something that I think about. So yeah, first day pitchers and catchers report to spring training, and that night, Padres had a starting pitcher. Great. Still, who's going to DH? Are they trading Robert Suarez? Dennis Lynn, I just saw in The Athletic, he's talking about how Dylan Cease is expected to stay. They're not making this move to then trade Dylan Cease. But as I tweeted out earlier today, I would not be surprised if they do. Like, I'm not counting out them trading Dylan Cease now that they do have Nick Pivetta, because you could, and this was me before I read Kevin's article and, reading about them being okay with going over the CBT. But just how they had operated prior to this, it was kind of hard for me to believe that they'd go over the luxury tax. So that's part of why I'm still not ruling out Cease being traded. You could get pitching back still, cheaper pitching, and a bat, DH. I don't think it would hurt to add another outfield option. Maybe you get a reliever and then you trade Cease and you part with Suarez, but you can get some good talent back that can, cheaper, controllable, and they'd be not replacing Suarez, but they could be a high leverage reliever still. I don't have names off the top of my head, but just throwing that out there. I think the stronger argument is to keep doing Cease because you're trying to win right now. And if it is true, like they're totally fine with going over the CBT and paying the 20% of however much they go over, because remember, their penalty isn't compiling anymore because they didn't go over it last year, so it resets. So that's great. And that's probably why they're willing to go over this year. But yeah, let's say that, the strong argument is to keep Cease. You're trying to win now, like I just said, but also to build off of this Pivetta move. So now, instead of trading Cease and Pivetta's the 3, who knows what you would get back, but let's just say that. Now, and we know it's important for the regular season, but the postseason as well, to not just have to run a bullpen game out there, because that can get very hairy, although it worked against us. But now it's Darvish, it's King, it's Cease, it's Pivetta, and now instead of 2 guys for 5 spots, now it's 4 guys. I don't think Kolek is really going to be in it, but okay, whatever. Mike Schilt did mention Kolek, but this was hours before the Pivetta news came out. But I assume they'd still give him the shot. If they're building him up to be a starting pitcher and be ready for that, you should still give him a shot. But now it's 1 spot, you would think, if they go with the 5-man, for 4 guys fighting for that? Brito, Vasquez, Waldron, Kolek. Because Hoeing and Morahone are going to be in the bullpen. That was something that was talked about by Schilt today in his media scrum. Now you have just more guys fighting for 1 spot, not fighting for 2 spots, which it already looks better. I saw 97.3 tweet out, here's how the Padres starting rotation could look this season for Ruben Niebla, Michael King, Dylan Cease, Yu Darvish, Nick Pivetta, and then you have Waldron, Vasquez, Burrito as the 5. It just eases my mind a little bit, makes me feel a little bit better. I know that other fan bases will say they have a stronger rotation and all that, but they needed to have a major league vet in that 4 spot, and that's what they have right now. So that's great. And them going over the CBT, by the way, I'm not pissed off that they're going over the CBT. Like, doesn't hurt me. Great. Yeah, I want you to spend money. This is the whole point of, questioning the ownership and all that stuff. We want this to happen. We want moves. We want to make this team better, the improvement. We want to see that. And it wasn't happening. And I think it could have happened more this offseason, especially coming off of this move for Nick Pivetta. So that's where my frustration is. But no, go over the CBT. Great. Having to reset it last year, I get it. But yeah, you should be going over the CBT. When you're a 93-win team this past year, you have key players not stay with the team and they depart because you're not willing to pay them. And how are you replacing those guys? You're replacing those guys with platoons, and maybe they have one more good year in them and we're paying them $1 million. That's what you're replacing them with. Replacing them with guys that, now Profar was this before last year, but guys that like weren't wanted by the Colorado Rockies. I'm talking about Elias Diaz. So that's what we're doing here. And that's frustrating to see. I'd love for those guys to prove me wrong, but looking at it on paper, and I know the game's not played on paper, but that's all we can do right now is look at it on paper. It's frustrating. Less frustrating seeing that they signed Nick Pivetta, but it's also frustrating at the same time for the reasons that I went over earlier in the show. All right, before getting to the chat, I did want to go over some of the things that Mike Schilt talked about in his media scrum. Some of it isn't as relevant anymore because of the addition of Pivetta, but here it is. Every pitcher is in the building that's been signed. Good competition for the rotation. Brito, Kolek, Waldron, and Vasquez will get opportunities to start in spring. Does this stop Kolek from getting opportunities? I don't think it should, especially early in spring, because who knows? There could be an injury for Randy Vasquez or Johnny Brito or Matt Waldron. And what if the Padres say, no, now scrap that because we have Pivetta, or Pivetta could get hurt, or someone else in the rotation could get hurt or have some sort of setback. I mean, Joe Musgrove dropped a kettlebell on his toe the other year, one of these past years, right? So something can happen. So I think, especially early in spring, keep him as a starter, build him up, continue to build him up as a starter, and see what happens with Kolek. It's an option. And if it doesn't work out, it's much easier to go from a starter in that buildup to the bullpen than to go from the bullpen and being used to, using all your bullets to having to build up to be a starter. And that takes time. It doesn't take time to go from a starter to the bullpen, or at least maybe it will for guys that, are in that every day. But just thinking in my head, it shouldn't take. You should be able to go from starter to the bullpen in one night if you have to, where reliever to starter in one night, you can do it, but are you going to be pitching one inning all the time and then you're going to throw 5 innings? No. 5 innings to 1 inning? Yeah. So for this, I would still go. I would give Kolek these opportunities. Obviously, still Brito, Vasquez, Waldron. Waldron did talk to the media today, and he was mentioning about how he is going to use that knuckleball more. But I wonder what that means. Is that full R.A. Dickey, Tim Wakefield, or is it more than 40%? Is it between 40 and 80%? Is it over 80%? What is it? And I'm sure it's going to be challenging for him at times, maybe in spring or in the regular season. When that thing is not working, can you keep going back to it, though? Start after start to see if it is going to work that day. Just because it didn't work the previous start doesn't mean it's not going to work the next start. So can he remain confident in himself? Can he have that confidence in that pitch regardless of the results? Because the confidence was not there when he started struggling this past year. So we'll see. But as I mentioned, Hoeing and Morahone in the pen makes sense, especially with Morahone and the injury issues. Just as no Tanner Scott. You want to have that lefty there, high leverage. Jason Hayward, according to Schilt, excited to be here, so that's great. And then he said good catching competition with Diaz, Campy, Soli, and Maldonado. Diaz, obviously, it's a major league deal. The two guys that have the edge right now on paper. It's Elias Diaz and it's Luis Campusano. But Campy, you got to prove it. Maybe you don't have to prove it in spring. He probably has an edge, but stay healthy. And when you get your opportunity, perform offensively and be better defensively, I think. So that's what I've got here today. Again, Nick Pivetta, he is a Padre. Padres have not officially announced it yet, but I assume that he's going to be coming in soon into Peoria to get that physical done and get on the field and start throwing. All right. Before getting to the chat, shout out to some of the great partners of the show. Gaglione Bros, famous cheesesteaks and garlic fries. Their main location is on Friars Road. Check them out. Link in the description. The address, phone number, all that good stuff. Cheesesteak fries, cheesesteaks, garlic fries, cheese fries. They've got a lot of great stuff there. Cheesesteak fries are the bomb. So check them out. Again, main location on Friars Road, and they are inside Snapdragon Stadium. They are inside Petco Park as well. Breaking Tea, they have a 20% off sale going on right now. So click that link that I have in the description, and let me give you that code here real quick. Baseball is back. Use that code. Baseball is back at checkout, 20% off all baseball merch, including the Padres shirts, at checkout through Sunday. 20% off. So use that to your advantage. And then Underdog Fantasy, 50% deposit match when you sign up with code Talking Friars. Click that link in the description. It will be a 50% deposit match up to $1,000, and you get $20 off your first order with SeatGeek. Same code, Talking Friars. Sign up with your email there. All right. Let's get to the chat, see what some Padres fans are thinking here on this Wednesday evening. I don't know about you guys, but my evening got a little bit better seeing this news, but again, I'm still a little frustrated. Irie says, just hoping this is not Cease replacement if we trade him. Yep, totally agree. Like if you're willing, like Kevin is saying, to go over the CBT like this, then go all in for this year. Because these guys that you have for big contracts, do we think that contract's going to look great when they're 40? The money's just going to keep going up for them. They're in their primes. Manny's healthy. Tatis is healthy. You have Merrill, cheap contract. You have King for one more year. Who knows what his future is going to be? Arise, one more year. Suarez so far, as of now, we got that one more year. Who knows? So use it to your advantage. Use that as like inspiration to keep going and be creative with these deals like they have been. I just wish they would have been. Maybe they tried. I'm sure Preller did try, but be creative with deals. I wish they would have done that earlier this offseason with some of these guys. And again, maybe they tried and, they weren't willing to do what Nick Pivetta was willing to do because it is February 12th. And maybe he didn't want to do that. Like he wasn't going to do that in November, but now he's willing to do it because of what the other options are. And he wants to be in the rotation, guaranteed for a contending team. But yeah, it's just disappointing a little bit seeing this. And it's like, all right, well, where was this earlier? You got to have two sides to tango. I get it. I hope that ownership made it clear. Because again, it's the Seidler trust. So I hope they made it clear beginning of the offseason, this is how much you have. Because if plans are just changing now in mid-February, that's not helping the Padres. Because if you really wanted to help the Padres, we would have made this thing clear at the beginning of the offseason. John says Padres are ruining baseball with all the deferred money. I'm sure this is a Dodger fan that's being sarcastic because baseball fans and Padres fans get on the Dodgers for the deferred money. Deferred money, maybe you're not great, and I'm assuming you're a Dodger fan. Maybe you're not great with like comprehension and what deferred money is. Deferred money is when a contract is like you're pushing it down the line to way after a contract's over. The Padres, they're paying Nick Pivetta some money this year, but not very much. But they're still paying him later in the contract, during the contract. So that's not deferring money, just to be clear. Padres number one says, why pay him the same as Cease when he has a +4 ERA? I mean, I get the question, but Dylan Cease, it's arbitration. Nick Pivetta is a free agent. Dylan Cease is going to get more per year, I would imagine, than what Nick Pivetta is getting here. So I think we got to take that into account. And also, it is the structure of the deal. Are the Padres really paying him the same as Cease? If he opts out after 2 years, which he may not, who knows what's going to happen. But if he opts out after 2 years, didn't he only receive, he ends up receiving what, 21, something like that? 21 mil a year, or not a year, 21 mil in total, I think. Something like that, which isn't that much for 2 years. So that's actually less per year than Cease, what Cease is getting this year. But yeah, arbitration is a big thing with that. If he was on the free agency, if he was in free agency, it would be different. And this thing is, I'm seeing people saying it didn't make sense, makes no sense to pay Pivetta 55 mil. I admit, yeah, when I saw that, I was surprised that I was like, oh, wow, okay. The Padres giving someone $50 million. But they're not giving him $50+ million right now. They might if he opts in to all those years. But right now, what are they committing to him right now? If we go look at that contract, what Jeff Passan tweeted, let me pull that up again. $3 million signing bonus, $1 million salary, so $4 million there, and then 19 mil next year. So 19 plus 4 is 23. They're only committing 23 million to him. They're not committing 55 right now. They may have to, but I think we should look at it as 2 years and 23 mil right now. And when you look at it that way, it's not that bad. For a guy that's going to give you, that could give you, 29, 30 starts, 140 plus innings. And these salaries keep going up. So if years down the road, what you're paying to Nick Pivetta, when, by the way, a bunch of money is freed up, I don't think it's going to be that bad. I'm seeing people like this saying it's an overpay. I think people are looking at the $55 million number, and they're seeing the ERA. So it's understandable if you're looking at it that way, but I encourage you to look at it a little bit different. Let's see. I don't know. Lil Casino asks, I don't know how you're not more pumped. Pivetta is a baller, LFG. I'm happy that they're making this movie. Like, I'm happy that they have Nick Pivetta, but it's the stuff surrounding it, like the contract and stuff that didn't happen earlier this offseason, where I'm seeing this right now, and I'm disappointed that they didn't do more of this type of thing earlier in the offseason. But no, of course I love that the Padres are adding. You put him with Ruben Niebla, I'm liking that for sure. Going through the chat here, let's see. What do you think this means for keeping or trading King or Cease? I wouldn't be surprised. I would be shocked if King gets traded. I would not be shocked if Cease gets traded. I'll be a little surprised because it seems like reports are pointing towards Suarez being traded out of those three right now, because the Padres still like their bullpen even if Suarez isn't in it, with Jason Adam and Estrada and Morhone, Sean Reynolds, Brian Hoeing, guys like that. But to me, if they're going to go over the luxury tax like this, and they're with this move, they're going to be more than the Dylan Cease contract over the luxury tax. It'll be one thing if they were, trade the Cease contract, all of it, and they'd be under. Then I'm thinking, okay, still on the table. But now I feel more like I'm not ruling a Cease trade out. Like, they still should be listening. But I think that with this move, it signals to me that they're going to continue to be over the luxury tax, and they're going to try to win this year, which is great. I just wish, again, that they would have done some of these types of moves earlier in the offseason with guys that were available at that point in time. And I mean, maybe those were presented to those players and they didn't want to do that. And if that was the case, then okay. But I don't know that for sure right now. David Peralta's still out there. Yep. I wonder what he's going to get. All right, that's going to do it. Talking Friars episode 665. Thank you, everyone, for the time. I appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Nick Pivetta is a Padre. It's good. The Padres, they're trying to improve. We'll see the impact that he has and some of the other moves that they'll make before opening day, because they're probably not done.